The ERi-TV news broadcast crew and I, Delete Sahaya, are now ready for your daily news briefing at 10:30 local time. First, let us catch up with the major headlines. President Isaias returns back home. Foreign ministers of Eritrea and Egypt met and had talks. EU proposed 21st package of sanctions against Russia, targeting banks. UK and Australian ministers held deep strategic relationship at the Yucumane meeting. Proceeding with our reports. President Isaias and his delegation have returned back home in the late morning hours today, concluding a fruitful visit to Egypt. During his visit, President Isaias and his meeting conducted with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the two leaders agreed to deepen and alleviate the historical and brotherly ties of friendship and cooperation that exist between the two countries to a higher level. They also agreed on the launching of concrete programs in the sectors of maritime resources, development of port infrastructure, and maritime transport within the overall economic, political, and diplomatic framework, an agreement reached in the past. The two leaders also discussed in greater detail in economic, political, diplomatic, and security dimensions of development and trends in the Red Sea, in the Middle East, in the Horn of Africa, and other international matters of mutual interest. President Isaias also visited a number of industrial plants and logistic facilities in Greater Cairo and Suez zones, as well as the new administrative capital in Cairo, governorate, and various public services pavilion and infrastructure projects under construction. The presidential delegation includes Mr. Osman Saleh, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Osman Saleh, Minister of Foreign Affairs in Eritrea, and Mr. Badr Abdelayati, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt, met and held talks in the afternoon hours of yesterday. During the meeting, Eritrea and Egypt agreed to strengthen overall bilateral cooperation and coordinate their respective positions on the issues of common interest. In a joint press conference held after the talks, the two foreign ministers invoked historical and brotherly ties that exist between Eritrea and Egypt, and extensive talks held between President Isaias and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in Cairo on 8 June this week, affirmed the two sides have reached a cooperation agreement on the sectors of mining, infrastructure, housing, the pharmaceutical industry, maritime transport, port connectivity, as well as ports development, especially in Asab, Massawa, Marsa Fatma, and land and air and maritime connectivity between the two countries. Egypt reiterated that it owes full support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Eritrea in regard to the security of the Red Sea, the region, as well as in the whole, and reiterated the new and urgency of bolstering capabilities of the National Institute as a bedrock of stability and development. This was in line with the pronounced and aligned positions of the two heads of state on the imperative of respecting fundamental principles of international law on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states. The two foreign ministers further affirmed continuation of periodic consultative meeting in Cairo and Asmara between relevant government bodies of the two sides, as well as coordination in their positions on the regional and international matters. Eritrea has participated in various international forums, including at the African Commemorative Day and 36th anniversary of establishment of African Union, as well as at the first St. Petersburg International Conference. At the African Commemoration Day and 63rd anniversary of establishment of African Union, that was held in Doha, Qatar, Eritrea was represented by Mr. Ali Ibrahim, Eritrea's ambassador to Qatar. At the event, a pavilion reflecting history and cultural heritage of Eritrea, living standard and international and unity and diversity of the Eritrean ethnic group has been staged, as well as a video presentation focusing on the tourism opportunities in Eritrea. The visitors of the pavilion commended the presentation, expressed their eagerness to know more about culture and history of Eritrea. In the same vein, Eritrea's ambassador to Russian Federation, Mr. ERi-TV, participated at the St. Petersburg International Conference that was convened in Moscow from 3rd to 6th June. At the sideline of the conference, Ambassador Petros also conducted bilateral meeting with various institutions and companies. The conference, which is being held under the portent of President Vladimir Putin and bring together about 24,000 participants from 114 countries as well as trade and economic institutions, focuses on the global economy and cooperation, social life and technological era, future prospect of technology, as well as environmental and public administration. A meeting aimed at empowering female youth has been conducted at Nafa Kader's School on 9 June. The meeting was organized in collaboration with the Office of PFDJ and the National Union of Eritrean Women in the Northern Red Sea region. The meeting, in which youth female workers from various institutions took part, was organized in collaboration with the Office of PFDJ and the National Union of Eritrean Women in the Northern Red Sea region. At the meeting, Ms. Miriam Yosef from Nafa Kader School gave detailed briefing on the discrimination against women and its historical development, as well as experienced women in the world had to go through to ensure their rights at various stages of history. Noting that contribution of Eritrean women in the armed struggle for independence is practical example for equality, Ms. Miriam said that educational opportunities created by the government of Eritrea after independence has enabled women to develop themselves and play due part in the nation-building process. She also called for exerted efforts to strengthen their organization and fully use the opportunities being created and government institutions to support their activities. Ms. Jim'a Mohammed Raki, head of the National Union of Eritrean Women in the Northern Red Sea region, on her part underlined the significance of youth female participants in the implementation of the objective and the vision of the union. The participants of the meeting called for sustainability of the similar meeting aimed at enhancing the awareness of women and strengthening organizational capacity, among others. Straight ahead is our international news after a short break. Welcome back. The EU has proposed 21st package of sanctions against Russia for its war in Ukraine, heavily targeting the country's banks and crypto network, as well as drone production, oil traders and refiners, EU Chief Diplomat Kaja Kallas said on Tuesday. The new package will propose listing of 170 individuals and entities. These include close of 90 banks, the biggest in one go, and would take total number of listed banks to over 100, or more than half of the Russia's 213 internationally connected lenders. The bank will come under the full weight of the EU sanction, including asset freeze, travel and transactions ban, and the package will be presented to EU ambassador on Wednesday for the negotiation. Western sanctions already heavily target Russia's banking system, and its major bank were disconnected in 2022 from SWIFT, a secure global financial payment institution system. However, Russia's companies new use a board network for smaller lenders to evade sanctions and continue trading. Russian economic growth slowed sharply to just 1% last year from 4.9% in 2024, which officially blamed on the highest interest rates, Western sanctions, and a strong ruble. British and Australian foreign defense ministers on Wednesday told journalists they were focused on security concerns in Ukraine to Indo-Pacific and Middle East as they reasserted importance of the Eucommene defense partnership between the two allies. Speaking at a news conference after Eucommene meeting in London, British Foreign Minister Yvette Cooper said the meeting had been a reflection of every deep and long-standing friendship and partnership between UK and Australia. Her Australian counterpart, Penny Wong, thanked the UK for its work on attempting to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. She said the development today demonstrates the fragile nature of ceasefire, referring to the latest escalation in hostiles between Iran and the United States. The war between Iran, Israel, and the United States has killed thousands and disrupted roughly one-fifth of the world's supply of oil and the natural gas, sending prices sharply higher. Iran has blocked traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, while the U.S. has maintained its own blockade on Iranian ports. On our last report, U.S. spending on nuclear weapons surged by nearly a quarter in 2025 compared to previous year, according to findings by the anti-nuclear watchdog. In a report released on Tuesday, the international campaigns to abolish nuclear weapons said the world's 9 nuclear-armed states spent nearly $119 billion on the arsenals last year. That is equivalent of $3,768 every second. The U.S. remained by far the biggest spender, pouring $69.2 billion in the nuclear arsenal, more than all other 8 nations combined. Washington also recorded the largest annual increase, with spending rising 22% year-on-year, or $12.4 billion. Combined spending of the U.S., Russia, China, the UK, France, India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea jumped 19% year-on-year on $16.8 billion. China ranked second with spending of $13.5 billion, while the UK overtook Russia as the third largest spender, allocating $12.6 billion compared to Moscow $9.5 billion. The 9 nuclear powers have spent combined $471 billion on their arsenal over the past 5 years, the group said. It added that a single-day nuclear weapons spending in 2025 could have provided food for 2 million people for a year, while annual spending could have covered the UN's regular budget for 32 years. The report comes as the U.S. in considering deployment of its nuclear weapons, additional NATO member state in Europe, according to the Financial Times report last week. The financial outlet said the U.S. officials has discussed expanding nuclear sharing arrangement beyond the current participants. Dear viewers, we've come to the end of tonight's news. Let's have a quick recap of the headlines. President Isaias returns back home. Foreign ministers of Eritrea and Egypt met and held talks. EU proposed 21st package of sanctions against Russia, targeting banks. UK-Australia ministers held deepened strategic relationship after a meeting. And that was the news from ERi-TV studios. This has been the ERi reporting. Thanks for watching and have a good night.